US President Donald Trump stated that he is disappointed in the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. He also recalled his meeting with the Kremlin leader in Alaska, but noted that after returning, Putin struck Ukraine again.
I am very disappointed in Putin. We met in Alaska, it was a good meeting, and then he went back and sent drones to Kyiv.
At the same time, Trump still believes that to end the war, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky should meet with Putin. The US president also recalled the nuclear threats from the former president of the Russian Federation, now Deputy Secretary of the Russian Security Council Dmitry Medvedev, calling him an unreasonable person.
Russia made some slight threats against us not so long ago. And I sent nuclear submarines, the deadliest weapons ever created. I did this because of his mention of the word nuclear. He was a foolish man who works for Putin. And I sent a submarine or two to the Russian coast just as a precaution. We can't allow people to throw that word around carelessly.
In addition, Donald Trump noted that the United States is 25 years ahead of Russia and China in the field of submarines. Trump stated that the US has set a course to modernize its nuclear arsenal. According to Keith Kellogg, the US President's special representative for Ukraine, the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin realizes that he cannot win the war he started against Ukraine. Kellogg said this during the Washington Security Forum, as reported by The Guardian. Earlier, the American leader stated that with support from the EU, Ukraine is quite capable of reclaiming all its territory within its original borders. Russia is experiencing a fuel collapse, and the authorities are being forced to purchase gasoline from abroad. On September 30th, the Council of the Eurasian Economic Commission eliminated the import duty on gasoline, diesel fuel, marine fuel, and aviation kerosene. This decision will come into effect in 10 days. Currently, the Russian fuel market is short by about 20% of the monthly gasoline consumption volume. The situation in the Russian Federation is now critical. After drone attacks on oil refineries, as a result of which at least 6 plants have completely or partially halted production, gasoline output in September dropped by 1 million tons.
The first signs of a shortage. They aren't selling gas cans. Last week on the M4, only the third gas station had gasoline, and it was 105 octane.
The shortage is felt most acutely in regions that were already lacking, such as the occupied Crimea and the Far East. In Crimea, since September 29th, strict limits have been imposed on retail gasoline sales, no more than 30 liters per person. At first, independent gas stations suffered from the gasoline shortage, with some of them completely shutting down operations. But now the situation has become difficult even for the gas station networks of major oil companies. Since July, Russia has already sharply increased its gasoline purchases from Belarus by 36%. At the same time, in September, imports jumped by about 170% compared to August. In August, Reuters reported that due to drones, Russia's oil industry lost 17% of its refining capacity. Wholesale gasoline prices have soared by more than 40% since the beginning of the year, and this is negative for inflation, since rising fuel costs inevitably increase expenses in agriculture, transportation, and logistics, which in turn leads to higher prices for food and essential goods. Meanwhile, on October 1st in Yaroslavl, Russia, there was a fire at a local oil refinery. Local social media report that, according to preliminary information, the VT6 unit is involved. This unit processes crude oil products, particularly mazout, for further production of diesel fuel and lubricating oils.
Ukraine is deliberately targeting air defense systems in temporarily occupied Crimea. Such strikes serve several important purposes. This was stated by Alexander Muzienko, a serviceman of the Territorial Defense Forces and a military expert, according to Union citing Radio NV. According to him, work is underway to demilitarize occupied Crimea because Russia needs to be weakened. In the expert's opinion, this also leads to a reduction in the enemy's capabilities in the Black Sea, which is a strategic objective for the defense forces. Ukraine is also showing the world that, in reality, Russia is the very paper tiger that US President Donald Trump spoke about. The expert emphasized,
another goal is to increase our ability to strengthen operations in the Black Sea using both maritime and aerial drones. Russian missile boats, including carriers of Kaliber missiles, have been struck by aerial drones. That is why strikes are being carried out against enemy radars and surveillance equipment.
He noted that the enemy, in turn, is installing electronic intelligence and warfare systems to counter these strikes. Therefore, In order to make the strikes more effective and to allow surface drones to reach Novorossiysk, this infrastructure needs to be destroyed, the expert said. According to Musienko, strikes on Russian equipment, aircraft, air defense systems, and radars inflict serious damage on the occupiers, depleting their resources. Ukraine's defense forces regularly destroy Russian air defense systems, turning the peninsula into a kind of black hole for expensive air defense systems. Just recently, units of the main intelligence directorate of the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, known as the Primara, have carried out verified strikes on targets such as the Pantsir S-1 air defense system, two S-300V air defense systems, a Torem-2 air defense system, an Obzor radar, an Imbier radar, and two Kosta radars. Military and political analyst Alexander Kovalenko emphasized that the gradual destruction of Russian air defense systems in Crimea, which began back in 2024 with the help of Attack-MS missiles, has now shifted to a more systematic and highly effective hunt using strike drones. The Czech Republic has banned entry for Russian diplomats and holders of service passports who do not have accreditation in the country. This was announced on social network X on Tuesday, September 30th by Czech Foreign Minister Jan Lipavsky. He added that the Prague government supported his initiative. The ban will apply at international airports.
Sabotage operations are becoming more frequent, and we will not take risks by allowing agents operating under diplomatic cover into the country. I will continue to push for the strictest measures at the Schengen zone level. We will protect the Czech Republic.
According to the head of the Czech Foreign Ministry, by its actions, the Czech Republic wants to set an example for other countries. In addition, as of September 30th, all Czech visa centers in Russia have closed. This is according to a statement posted on the website of their operating company. It states that the last day for accepting documents at regional Czech visa centers was September 26th, and at the Moscow center, September 29th. After this specific date, to formally apply for Czech Schengen visas, you must directly contact the consular section of the Embassy of the Czech Republic in Moscow for all necessary procedures. In Brussels, the Czech Republic has proposed introducing restrictions on Russian diplomats at the level of the entire European Union, and this proposal is currently being discussed in the EU Council as part of the 19th package of sanctions against Russia. According to the proposed new rules, Russian diplomats will be required to notify the authorities of EU countries they plan to visit, as well as those they will transit through on their way to their destination, at least 24 hours before crossing the border. Germany also wants to achieve a tightening of the visa regime for Russians in the Schengen area. The German tabloid Bild writes that a document prepared by Berlin as part of the development of a new sanctions package contains a demand for the European Commission to fully implement the recommendations from 2022. These recommendations stipulate that visas for Russian tourists should be significantly reduced.